Hey everyone, this is Laura Gadenik with Laura Gadenik Therapeutic Astrology, and I'm here to give you the astrology for the weeks of March 18th through the 31st, 2024. And I am also a therapist, so I always try to offer kind of a therapeutic lens from which to view the astrology so that we can use our free will and work with the energy rather than passively letting the energy work us. So with that being said, let's get started. So Thursday, the 21st, this is really the first time in the week where we have something big happening astrologically. We have Venus, goddess of love, beauty, connection, flow, harmony, peace, coming into a conjunction with Saturn. Saturn is a planet about boundaries, commitments, duties, obligations, thinking about the long term, what's really important, hard work. And Venus is what's called exalted in the sign of Pisces. This is where this conjunction is happening, is in Pisces. So Venus exalted in Pisces basically means that Venus things are a lot easier to do. So Venus things are relationships, making connections, forming bonds, forming emotional bonds, empathy, compassion, caring, creativity. Things just, the lines get a little blurry between people, between things. Things are more easily able to kind of mesh or meld together to create cohesion. And that's what Venus really wants to do, is create cohesion and peace and harmony and love and joy. So Venus is able to do these things much easier in the sign of Pisces. And then, coming up to a conjunction with Saturn, Saturn is a little bit opposite of those themes. Saturn is about boundaries, separation, kind of getting to the bones of the matter or to the core of something and letting excess things shed or letting them go so that we can focus on what's most important. So Saturn helps us think about long-term plans, long-term desires, and thinking about what's a plan for us to get there. How can we create a sense of safety and security. So those are some of the things that Saturn represents. And so when Venus and Saturn come together, this makes me really think about, thinking about boundaries in relationships. How can we create more cohesiveness, right? Venus and Pisces, more cohesiveness and togetherness and connection through boundaries, through saying our yeses and our nos, through getting in touch with what is truly important to us, through structure, maybe thinking about what structures, whether that's like communication or relationship structures, what structures are going to create the most cohesive, beautiful, harmonious, loving, lovely experience. And so that's what Venus, Saturn makes me think of. Also, generally speaking, maturation or maturation in relationships. Saturn rules over being more mature, being an adult, being a grown-up. And so thinking about how can my relationships become more mature? How can we take this relationship or the relationships that you're in to like a new level of maturity, so that both parties can feel seen and heard and connected, and so that we can create that cohesive harmony that Venus and Pisces really wants to create. There might be new commitments and agreements made in relationships. There could be, some boundaries, some no's, some feedback, but generally speaking, I think this is actually going to be really constructive and really good to help us create more ooey gooey Venus and Pisces magic. So I think it'll be overall really a positive experience. And you might also notice having a greater desire to work long and hard on an art project, on a collaboration, on something that you're creating. Venus and Pisces is very creative, and Venus rules over relationships. So there's that kind of collaborative element. What do your collaborations currently look with other people, maybe with even women or femme folk, people who identify as women. Venus represents the feminine quality or the feminine archetype, generally speaking. So, you might even find yourself wanting to collaborate with women or with women more, or even working towards something that speaks to the ideal of feminine freedom. Or, Venus, Saturn coming together makes me think about like, okay, what is the work, Saturn? What is the work that we have to do for the feminine, for the feminine archetype in the world that we live in? Like, how can we create greater harmony and peace and connection in our relationships, in the world, in our collaborations? And a lot of that has to do with looking at power dynamics and the ways some people are oppressed and others aren't. And, I think about women and how women's bodies are often very oppressed and all sorts of ways. So just thinking about that kind of work too. Also just, Venus, Saturn coming together, you might notice a more refined taste for pleasures. Oh yeah, one last thing, insights around what's important in relationships and kind of like what you want to do to make those important qualities last for a long time. Once again, Saturn is about what's lasting, what's sustainable. On the same day, we have the Sun making a sextile to Pluto. So this is, maybe not as noticeable. It's a minor aspect, but this will also bring a sense of insights and honesty and perhaps a deeper connection. So yeah, I think Thursday the 21st is going to be like a really, really nice, constructive time for relationships. Then on Friday the 22nd, we have Mars heading into the sign of Pisces. This is where Venus is. This is where Saturn is. Mars brings heat. Mars brings energy. Mars brings motivation. Mars brings conflict to the part of our charts that contain Pisces. So whatever house that is for you, that house is going to get an influx of energy, and maybe some passion, some more motivation, maybe some conflict. And once again, Pisces, well, I don't think I mentioned this before, but Pisces is a sign about the dream, the vision, the surreal, the mystery, what's kind of magical and mysterious and mystical about this world. And so Mars coming into Pisces might help you kind of connect more to a vision you have, or to a longing, or to kind of what you, how you desire to show up in the world, or how you desire the world to be, right? Like we have reality of how the world is, and then we have okay, like it would be better over here. It would be a lot better if these things were happening over here. And that's often Pisces. And some other planets too that can represent that, those archetypes as well. But so Mars coming into Pisces, there might be increased motivation to fight for a dream or for a vision, or to put your energy towards something surreal or seemingly magical. Also, Pisces is a sign that is really, it's a water sign. Water signs are all about emotion and empathy and feeling. And so Mars coming into Pisces kind of maybe takes our empathy and feeling and compassion to a new level of like, oh, okay, I have these feelings of compassion and empathy for the downtrodden, or for, people who are marginalized, or for injustices. And now I want to do something about it. Now I want to take action. So it can be really inspiring. At the same time, Mars is now entering into a sign where Saturn is. So Mars and Saturn coming together, that'll be like later in a couple weeks down the line, but that's going to kind of feel like we are running a marathon. Saturn wants to think about the long term, think about sustainability, work hard and slow and consistent. And Mars wants to go right now. Let's get it done. Let's do it. And so you have to think about like, how do I sustain my energy so that I can do something for a long time, or make my energy last? And so there's something, happening in the part of your chart that contains Pisces for you and your personal birth chart, where there's a lot of energy being generated in this part of the chart right now. And there's going to be this sense of like working towards something, working hard at something over the next couple of weeks as Mars enters Pisces. On the 24th, Sunday, we have a really lovely Venus in Pisces making a sextile to Jupiter in Taurus. These are the two benefics in astrology. These two planets bring peace and love and joy. And, once again, Venus is about relationships, connection, cohesion, harmony, love. And Jupiter is a planet about peace and wisdom and higher perspective and faith And so these two coming together in a harmonious aspect signifies a sense of celebration, a sense of ease and happiness, and maybe opportunity. Maybe things just like come more easily and readily to you. And that's going to be the part of your chart that contains Pisces and Taurus. There might be something happening there that something good, something juicy, something delicious. So that'll be really, really nice. And then things get a little spicy come the next week. On Monday the 25th, we have an eclipse in the sign of Libra. This is happening at 5 degrees of Libra. And eclipses are times of great changes and great energy. The changes might not happen immediately. Sometimes they do, but eclipses are so powerful and potent that sometimes they take months and maybe even up to a whole year to notice or to see these changes. And that's also because eclipses often happen in the same sign several times over the course of 18 months. So eclipses, right now we are in an eclipse cycle where we're having eclipses in Aries and Libra, and that'll be for an 18-month period. And this is the second eclipse that we are having in Libra. So the changes that are coming to this part of your chart, whatever part of your chart that contains Libra, it's not new. Think back to October of 2023. What were the changes or major shifts or endings or beginnings that were happening then? And this is kind of like maybe like chapter 2 to those changes. This is the second part to these changes. And so generally speaking, Libra is Venus's sign. Venus rules the sign of Libra. So Libra is a sign about relationships, harmony, making good judgments. Libra is ruled by the scales. What do scales do but weigh things to see what is of value, what is of worth? How do we make a good judgment, right? So thinking about like changes in the way that you're maybe even making decisions, or changes in the way that what your values are. How are you valuing certain things in your life? And that'll be dependent on whatever house this is for you. But it's likely that we're undergoing changes regarding our deep values and what's important to us, maybe in relationships. How do we create cohesion and harmony while also maintaining our individual separate selves, right? Aries represents the self that needs expression, the self that's important. And Libra, the opposite end of Aries, opposite times of year, represents, okay, like we have ourselves, we have our separate selves, but how can we fit together to make something beautiful, something harmonious and fulfilling? So yeah, this eclipse coming up, it might also bring up changes relating to art, relating to collaborations that you are that you have with other people. Yeah. And eclipses are times to lay kind of low. It's not a time to like work with the energy through intention setting. They're a bit more powerful than that you can't just kind of work with the energy. They're more faded in a sense. So I would recommend laying low, not making too many big plans or big plans at all, and hunker down, honestly. That's what I would say. So yeah, and this indicates a time when we are entering into eclipse season. So we will have another eclipse, I think the week after or 2 weeks after. I don't quite have the dates right now, but we're in eclipse season. And eclipse season indicates like, big changes happening, big moments of shifts, pivots. And also, you know, this eclipse, it's happening in Libra. Venus rules the sign of Libra, and Venus is in Pisces, the sign she's exalted in, and she just had this conjunction with Saturn. So it feels like there's something about this like Venus-Saturn conjunction that I just talked a lot about that's happening on Thursday the 21st that is carrying us through these changes through eclipse season. There's something around this eclipse that has to do with maturation in relationships, thinking about what's really important, thinking about the long term, thinking about structure and systems, relationally? How can we create more peace and harmony, and how can we enjoy ourselves more through those mechanisms, or through creating those mechanisms? And then Thursday, the 28th, is when we have Venus and Pisces making a sextile to Uranus and Taurus. It's a pretty minor aspect, but still we'll notice it. Uranus is the planet about changes, unexpected changes, often turnarounds, 180s, a desire to break free from some sort of mold or some sort of perceived constraint, to do something different. So, and this is a sextile. Sextiles are easeful aspects. They can provide opportunities sometimes. So you might notice this is a time where there are easeful and freeing changes happening in relationships, or in the way you express yourself, in art, beauty, all those Venus things that I just talked about. Just kind of put like changes, freedom, breakthroughs, 180 turns into that mix, and you can come up with all sorts of things, right? Like freedom and changes in art, creative projects, relationships. How can we, and I think maybe something to think about, like how to use this more constructively, is thinking about what are the ways that you feel held down in relationships, or confined, or constricted, or constrained. And thinking about how you can break free from those molds. And often when we feel that way, it's usually because we're functioning under a belief system that isn't actually true, or isn't actually, it's not working for us, and it might not be true. So I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, so thinking about like attachment systems in relationships, there's avoidant attachment, there's anxious attachment, there's secure attachment. And, I sometimes struggle with avoidance in relationships. When I perceive my partner needing more from me than I can give them, I tend to withdraw because I'm like, I don't have more to give. I can't give more. But then, I could question that belief of like, are they actually seeking more from me than I can give? Or is that just in my head? Is that a belief that I hold, that I'm disappointing my partner, or I'm letting them down, or they're needing more from me than I can give? Like, is that even true, right? Like, but that belief feels very constricting for me and makes me act and behave in all sorts of ways that don't help me or my partner, partners, whoever, friends, anyone. And so, thinking about like, how can I free myself from this like weightiness, from this heavy burden? Oh, I can like think about that thought, like identify the belief, and then question its validity, right? So in that way, we might experience some breakthroughs, or breaking free from something through this aspect. And also, Venus represents style, fashion, how you express yourself. So like, thinking about what do you want to wear perhaps, or like, how do you want to express yourself physically that you normally wouldn't, or that you would normally be a little bit more conservative. This is a time to kind of like let your freak flag fly, maybe like go get that tattoo that you've always wanted, that piercing, go get a haircut, don't make any, like you might regret it, but probably not because it's a sextile. But it's kind of that sense of like, oh, I just want to break free and just be myself and just express myself in these ways that I've always felt like I couldn't. And so this is a good aspect to kind of like experiment with that, right? So that is the astrology for the next couple of weeks. I hope this was useful. I would love to hear from you. Also, if you like the channel, subscribe, leave a comment. That helps the channel to grow, and I would really love that, appreciate that. I'm really trying to offer useful astrology from a more therapeutic lens, and so that would be useful or helpful for me to grow that. So thank you. And if you're interested in how the astrology is impacting you personally, I am open for consultations. Please reach out. You can leave a comment. You can email me at lauragadenic@consultation.com. I think that's my email. yes. And yeah, I hope the next couple weeks go well, and hope you have a good rest of your day.